U.S. President Donald Trump expressing his belief that an 80% tariff on Chinese goods, quote, seems right. This coming ahead of high-level trade talks with Chinese officials in Switzerland this weekend. The American leader making those remarks on a social media post, adding it was up to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. An 80% levy would be a sharp reduction from the current 145% reciprocal tariffs that the U.S. has slapped on Chinese goods. But it's not as low as the 60% that he had hinted at in some media reports. U.S. index futures tied to the Dow Jones initially lost gains after Mr. Trump's endorsement of an 80% levy on Chinese goods. It's in the green now, with the rest of U.S. stock futures indicating a higher market open. The upcoming U.S.-China trade talks will be closely watched by governments and businesses alike. Washington has been emphasizing it's looking to de-escalate tensions. Beijing also striking a confident note, saying it has full confidence in its ability to manage any trade issues with the United States. And more CNA's Yew Guan joins us live from Shanghai. Yew Guan, that confidence there, we're seeing it in Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Hua Chunying. She says China has, quote, no fear over how it is able to manage any turmoil from tariffs. So that's China's position going in, saying it has nothing to lose. It's coming from a position of strength.
Well, it really tells you where China stands in its approach to this upcoming talks, isn't it? Well, Donald Trump has said that China is eager to make a deal. It's quite likely China will drive a pretty hard bargain. After all, China does have a couple of cards to play. First of all, it has those restrictions that it could put on rare earths. And these are elements that are pretty important to U.S. defense and high-tech industry. After all, China controls or mines about 70% of the world's supply for rare earth and processes nearly 90% of it. Another possible card China could play, it is the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. So these are some of the cards China can play. And it is also, you can tell China's pretty hardline approach from the way state media has been kind of downplaying the upcoming talks. In fact, tonight on CCTV, there were no mention about the upcoming talks just tomorrow. In fact, the third headline mentioned the fact that, April figures for exports was better than expectations. In fact, in April, although exports to the U.S. dropped around 21%, exports to Southeast Asia rose at about the same percentage. And what's more, exports to EU rose about 8%. So overall, exports in April from China rose about 8%. So this is likely to strengthen China's hand further going into these talks. In fact, we already heard from the spokesperson from the Ministry of Commerce, who said in no uncertain terms yesterday that China would safeguard its own development interests while defending international fairness and trade order. He also said that China would not sacrifice its principled position under cohesion. His only reconciliatory words were the U.S. needs to meet China halfway to resolve concerns of both sides through equal consultation. So, China's approach to these talks can be summed up really in one Chinese proverb, 吃软不吃硬, which essentially translates to mean that China is amenable to coaxing but not cohesion. So perhaps the question we need to ask ourselves is, what would be the approach the U.S. would take in the talks tomorrow? Wei Su?
We shall see that, but there's a Yew Guan there laying out for us, deciphering China's position likely at those talks in Geneva on the weekend.